Welcome to my channel, Delightful Stories. I'll be happy if you subscribe to my channel and like it. Enjoy watching and don't forget to leave your opinion in the comments about the story. Monica habitually opened the door of her small apartment and stepped inside, while she fumbled for the light switch on the wall. From the darkness of the corridor, a big fluffy red cat came out gracefully and sleepily stared at her mistress, Rose Monica. She scratched her ear, went into the kitchen, put the old kettle on the gas stove, and sat down on the sofa. She woke up from the fact that the cat slightly bit her toe. She wanted to be indignant, but immediately realized that the pet actually saved her life. The kettle had already redeemed itself, and it wasn't steam but foul-smelling smoke. She jumped up from the couch at once. Monica turned off the gas and looked at what was left of the kettle with a squeeze. Strictly speaking, it was high time to buy a new one. This one was already covered in plaque from the hard water in the house. There was no way to clean it, besides somewhere upstairs. He had a cold, not such a big deal. It could still perform its primary function, but it was a shame to spend money on a new one. Now I would have to, with a heavy sigh. Monica decided it would be better in the morning. Apparently, she should go to bed now, and not try to make her usual evening tea again. She was too tired after a long day at work. She could burn down her whole apartment or even her whole house. No, she would have to do without tea. Sleeping. Monica was restless. As a rule, dreams didn't bother her. They were not meant for those who were tired enough to switch off from life. Barely her head touched the pillow. Still, there were the occasional sad exception. Sad because nothing good usually came to her in her dreams. On each of those nights, she would go back to the orphanage again and again. And now she saw her old room, or rather, their room. One for 24 girls, very vividly, and in the smallest detail. None of them had or could have anything of their own. The furnishings were as Spartan as possible. Level rows of beds, each with a tiny nightstand and a closet door, one for everyone. The nightstand was used to store conditional personal items, the list of which was strictly regulated: toothbrush, combs, towels, and some other personal hygiene items. If desired, a small set of paper and pencils, or a book or a toy. Of course, there were no locks at all. Anyone could have broken into even that bit of space. The caregivers did this on a regular basis. They checked to see if anyone kept anything forbidden. Monica did it again, said the kindergarten teacher to the girls in front of the line. I don't recall that the list of objects allowed to be kept and used included stones. Why stones? What was she going to do with them? Quietly, the teacher interrupted the girls. I want to listen, Monica. There was only one stone, mumbled like that, looking at the floor. Who cares? Why drag dirty stones from the street into the room at all? He wasn't dirty. The girl objected. I washed it. It looked like a heart. It even looked like it had a pink color. Red. Beautiful, you see. Monica, you surprise me. So no one would want to adopt, she shouted and was angry with tears. Monica, now an adult, woke up too early to get ready for work and too late to go back to bed. And to tell the truth, she didn't want to do that at all. She was afraid of doing it again. A dream, a memory. It wasn't much better on his, though. She was really sure that no one would want to take her out of the orphanage, and not even because it was a favorite scare story, the caretakers, but because every time it turned out to be true. It was unclear what caused the potential foster parents to dislike her. The only fact was that all the other children were taken away sooner or later, some at once, some after a while. But not hers. It was as if Monica was cursed. And even then the girl had learned a simple truth. The older she got, the less chance she had of being adopted. Everyone wants to take in a Mickey child, but not a difficult teenager. Many tears were shed, Many sleepless nights were spent grieving for Igor and Vanya about their hard fate. Only do it does not help. Maybe even the opposite. Who needs a gloomy, weeping girl who is long gone from the age of charming and slightly awkward Kitty? That's just it. That's how she stayed in the orphanage until she came of age. On the way out, as it should be, they gave her an apartment, but as a doghouse apartment, rather minicky, without any repairs. But Monica didn't complain. There were showers and toilets. That was fun. And most importantly, personal space, which before this, she could not even dream of. Of course, she had to find a way to make a living. There weren't many options, either as a cleaner or a dishwasher. Monica figured dishwashing would be easier than doing the heavy lifting. Maybe she shouldn't have. So she would have worked quietly, visited some office center, was engaged exclusively in their job duties, and in the restaurant shifts of 15 hours. Formally, of course, with an hour break for lunch. But who would give it? You eat quickly in 15 minutes and go back to washing dishes. Customers won't wait for you, and pay by the hour. And this very lunch hour, of course, deducted everything from it completely. Weekends were just as formal. But then she would change, get sick, or one of the waitresses would go on maternity leave or vacation. I had to take over, and when it came to work in the hall, almost without pay. Of course, no one warned Monica about these nuances when she was hired, and for the first time, such an order came as a surprise to her. "Monica, you're going to take over for Alaska tomorrow," the boss told me in a commanding tone. "She can't make it. She's sick, but Alaska is a waitress." The girl was taken aback. "Yeah. Can't you hold it in your hands? Or can't write down a customer's order? But that's not the position I was applying for. Besides, it would mean that I would have to work without any days off. And I've already had several substitutions this week. I need a rest. If you don't want to be fired, and trust me, I'll find one that you won't be able to get any more work. And if you're thinking of quitting on your own, you'll have to work your ass off. That includes the waitresses. I'll think about what kind of recommendations your future bosses will hear." What was she supposed to do? She went on working. She had no other options anyway. Quit and look for another job. There was absolutely no guarantee that the conditions would be better there. And you have to live on something until you find another job. And no savings from her salary, of course, could be collected. There was another problem associated with work. Monica's hands were constantly suffering from contact with water and harsh detergents. The restaurant management bought only the cheapest chemicals, not really thinking about how it would affect the employees. In theory, rubber gloves were supposed to protect against this, except that a good period was considered when one pair was issued for 2 to 3 months for both dishwashers. As a result, Monica's skin was dry and needy. Sometimes she looked at her hands and was horrified. It was as if they were the brushes of an ancient old woman, not of a young girl who had barely turned 19. And there was nothing she could do about it. She had no money for special, expensive creams. Cheap versions from the market could only slightly complicate her skin. Clearly, that wasn't enough. Any means on which she spent a huge, by its standards of money, at best, did not give any effect and even worsened the situation. Nevertheless, Monica was well aware that there were those who were even worse off. At least she had some kind of job and a roof over her head. That was good. Most people didn't have that either. If she happened to get an extra penny, she tried to give it all to those who, as she thought, needed the money more. And one day, on her way home from work, she heard the same quiet club squeak. She looked around for a long time in search of the source of the sound, and finally realized that it was coming from under a red car parked not far from her house. Looking in, she saw a tiny kitten of incomprehensible color. So dirty was it. "Where is your mother?" "Baby." Softly she spoke. "Why are you crying?" "Meow," the kitten answered sadly. Pretty quickly Monica realized what the problem was. The animal had crawled under the car, hiding heavily, either from the cold or from some danger, and was stuck in some unknown mechanism. Hoping that she would not damage someone else's property, the girl tried to free the unfortunate creature and succeeded. Even if not at once, and even if a very impressive clump of dirty hair was left under the car. It seems that the kitten is so powerless that he did not even notice it, but he quickly realized that he was finally free and stopped complaining about the squeaking. He was now sitting in the arms of his rescuers and looking at her with large amber eyes, apparently hoping that she had something to eat. "What am I going to do with you?" Monica said thoughtfully, looking at him. The kitten fell silent. "I have no money to support a cat." She explained whether the kitten or herself. The baby looked at her with eyes and continuous dolls. "I'm going to regret this," Monica sighed, tucking the Mickey vibe and lump of dirty hair under her jacket. In this she was, oddly enough, mistaken. She has yet to regret her find. The cat, which turned out to be a bright redhead after the bath, was growing by leaps and bounds and was, oddly enough, quite strong and healthy. And let his appearance the financial cost increase significantly. In return, he gave Monica warmth, support, and the priceless feeling that she was not alone in this world. Especially valuable. Especially valuable. This turned out to be the moment when the girl suddenly left her fiancé. And after all, everything had started out so well. He was the same child from the orphanage who no one ever took into the family. They seemed to understand each other perfectly. Their relationship began in spite of an outright ban, even within the walls of the institution, without anyone noticing. The couple would sneak out of their rooms at night to be alone for at least a few minutes, and sometimes they would get a whole hour. They would simply walk around the grounds, look at the moon and the distant stars, and dream together of a happy future when they did not leave the hated orphanage. "When we get out of here, we'll definitely get married," said Archie. "Well, first we'll have to go to school and get a good job," Monica added judiciously. "Otherwise, what are we going to live on?" "Hey, don't ruin the romantic moment. I'm sure I can do pretty well without studying. Besides, I'm sure I could get a good job without any studying." He was right about that, but it didn't turn out the way Monica had imagined, and Archie himself had hardly meant for this to happen. Nothing foretold that one day he would come to his girlfriend to declare, "Monica, I'm sorry, but we have to break up with you." "Why?" she asked calmly. "Is there something that bothers you about our relationship? Maybe we can talk about it and find another way out." "I don't think so." Archie looked embarrassed. "See, it's not about you, and it's not about our relationship. It's just that I met another girl. She's the daughter of some powerful, rich guy, and she's crazy about me. I can't let a chance like this slip through my fingers. There's no other way for me to get to that level, and there never will be. Do you even love her?" "What's that got to do with it? Don't you get it? Her father agreed to pay for me to go to a prestigious university and help me open a business, just so his daughter would be happy. Will you be happy with that kind of money and connections? Of course you are. What if you're bored to death with her? You can't live long with someone you don't love. Then her daddy will quickly take everything you get from him and make sure that you don't." "You don't understand anything," he interrupted her rudely. "Or is it resentment and jealousy talking? I'm sorry I can't take you with me into this new life, but I can't give it up either. The only thing that hurts me is that you only told me about it now. How long you went behind my back with her. But you see, if it hadn't worked out, you would have gone on living with me, as if nothing had happened before the new rich bride, or until it changed your mind. You wouldn't cook your own food and wash your own socks, right? That's not what I meant. I meant that I love her, you. If you loved me, you wouldn't leave me for any money." Monica interrupted the flow of his excuses. "I don't blame you for anything, and I won't hold it against you, but I don't want to see you. Go away, please. Thank you for informing me of your decision instead of disappearing without warning." As soon as the door closed behind Archie, The mask of calm indifference flew off Monica's face. She sat down right in the middle of her little corridor behind her on the rough wall and wept bitterly. The cat was beside her in an instant, not understanding the reasons for her mistress' sudden change of mood, but sincerely wishing to help her in some way. It was no longer a tiny kitten. For 6 months he had grown into a strong, multinational and very fluffy beast. True, Monica Long could not think of his worthy name. And then she decided that it was too late, so he was called by the name she was used to cats. And now, the cat was walking around the crying hostess, rubbing against her, trying to put her snout under her arm and grumbling incessantly. In a word, he used all his arsenal of soothing remedies. After a few moments, the girl began reflexively stroking the animal. Then he moved on to the next phase of his not cunning plan and began to lick the tears right off her face. A few minutes later, Monica was already laughing merrily, trying in vain to pull the cat away from her with his rough tongue. Of course, all his efforts could not heal the part the betrayal of a loved one had caused, but at least she was still a little relieved that there was still a creature in the world who truly loved her. Monica was plucked from the flood of memories by the ringing of the alarm clock. Now it was definitely time to get ready for work. She hastily dressed and peed. She looked at herself in the mirror in the bathroom and recognized her appearance as decent enough. On the way, he reflected on the fact that he should not forget on his day off to buy a kettle. It would be her birthday present. Everything worked out so well that it would fall on the next day just as it was her day off. Unless, of course, the boss had the idea of putting her in place of one of the waitresses again. But Monica wanted to hope for something good once in a while. And then, out of the corner of her eye, she noticed some strange shine beside the road. It was very unexpectedly early spring. The typical slush underfoot. Everything around was muddy, gray, and dull. And here in the midst of it all was something unusual, as if I had got here from a completely different time. There was still plenty of time. Monica was in the habit of leaving the house much earlier than necessary, and there was no telling what might happen on the way. Here at last it happened. She picked up a gleaming sheet of paper from the dirt. It was made of thick, glossy paper. That's why it didn't disappoint in the slurry. It looked something like a ticket to an expensive movie theater near her work. She herself, of course, had never held them in her hands, but once she had seen them near the boss, brought them to show off to her girlfriend. What posh tickets to some world premiere got her fiancé? Looking at the sheet, she instantly realized that it was much better than tickets to any movie. Monica was holding a subscription to an unlimited number of treatments at the spa just for tomorrow. It seemed like a real gift of fate to the girl. She had already seen how she would come to this establishment where she would be greeted by a friendly receptionist, maybe even offered a cup of tea or coffee, and then she would be able to unwind. Of course, to get a nice haircut, hairdresser, pedicure, and manicure. Surely the salon can do something about the skin on her hands. Then, of course, it will go bad again, but at least for that day. At this point, the flight of fancy was rudely interrupted by the voice of conscience. The season ticket did not belong to her. Moreover, it flaunted exactly the real owner, for whom all these wonderful treatments were intended, and coffee, an affectionate smile of the administrator. If Monica took it after all, it would be like stealing. But she so wanted for once in her life to experience what for women is a normal part of everyday life. And to tell the truth, it is unlikely that the mistress of this invitation is in any great need. Even by the look of the sheet, it is clear that this salon is not cheap, and it's her birthday tomorrow. And this is a fortuitous find. The only gift she has. You never know. Maybe it's true. Fate itself has decided to make up for all the suffering Monica has endured in her short life. In that case, she certainly shouldn't turn down this chance. And immediately she became disgusted with herself. In these reflections, the girl clearly heard the voice of her former fiancé, who had abandoned her with roughly the same wording. But here it was an entirely different case. By and large, she was not hurting anyone by taking advantage of this season ticket. Behind this inner argument, she didn't even notice how she got to work. No solution as to what to do with the unexpected find was found, but right from the doorstep, her boss decided to give her another surprise. "Oh, Monica, great. Tomorrow you go out instead of Alaska. She has things to do." "I have things to do tomorrow, too." The words came out of her mouth as if she had no choice. She didn't even have time to grasp the meaning of what she'd said, not to mention the fact that she had once again dared to defy her superiors. "What I said about bickering about extra shifts. You're told you'll marry an Alaskan, so you'll marry an Alaskan. I'm sorry, but there's no way I can do it tomorrow. I'll work 3 shifts for this. Just please let me go tomorrow." "Yeah, are you working? What about you? All you do is shirk your duties. I wish there was something else to do. I understand why you don't want to work tomorrow. You're probably going to a party. It's your birthday, right?" "Fake." Monica was surprised. She realized instantly that the truth would not get anything done now. "Oh yes, I forgot. You did, didn't you? Then why do you need the time off?" "You see, I really need to see a doctor." Without blinking an eye, the girl lied. "The last time I went, they said that if you don't come in time, the next appointment is in a couple of months, and during this time, things can get so bad that we have to go to the hospital for diagnosis. Who knows how long it will take." That's where she hit the bullseye. Clearly, sick leave was not welcome at work at all. But if she went to the hospital, there wouldn't be much to complain about. And when else would she be able to come in for her shift? In short, it wouldn't be in Alaska's best interest at all. And she didn't say, "All right, maybe tomorrow. Free." But then 8 shifts in a row and no excuses. "Okay, thank you," Monica said. If she can make it to work on her shift by the end of it. She flew home, elated at how she was going to spend tomorrow. In the end, she couldn't resist the temptation and decided to visit the Salon by all means. A subscription which had so fortunately fallen into her hands, and yet she had managed to defend her legal day off. What was that if not a sign from above? The next day she tried to wear the best of what she had. Truth be told, the word best was hardly the appropriate word in this situation, rather the least for wearing and, accordingly, the most decent looking. And if the clothes did the trick, the shoes did the trick. The shoes did the trick. The only thing she wore was her boots from September to May. At particularly cold times, the soil under them woolen socks, of course with such merciless use on the bike, had long since run down, and a cheap substitute bucket wiped itself almost to the holes. But it was still too cold for summer shoes, so, having no other options, it tried to camouflage all the defects with cheap, ordinary cream. Perfectly aware, however, that it would be unlikely to fool anyone with such a trick. However, only when she reached the Salon did Monica realize how futile her attempts to cover her poverty were. She guessed, of course, that it must not be a cheap place, but still she could not expect such luxury. A huge room, high ceilings, marble floors, gold decor. And of course, there was not only an aromatic bath, but also a whole pool, and the service in the salon at the highest level you could not even doubt. Monica was even embarrassed and stomped at the door indecisively for a while. Maybe it would still be better to just hand over the season ticket, letting him know that he had found it, and leave. Almost deciding that she would do so, the girl hesitantly pulled the handle, the door, and went inside. Everything looked even more chic here than it did outside. But she did not have time to take a good look at anything as she noticed the receptionist almost running toward her. Surely now they would ask her to leave and not to disgrace the most prestigious institution with her appearance. Monica had already prepared to say that she had only stopped by to give a season ticket to a lost customer. Maybe they knew the woman and could give her back what was missing. But then something happened that she didn't expect at all. "Hello, Anna," the administrator said. "We are glad to see you again in our salon. Let me take your jacket." From surprise, Monica forgot what she wanted to say, and when she came to her senses, it was already late. She managed to sit down in a cozy chair and handed out a porcelain cup, from which the aroma stretched, refreshing coffee. It was just as she had imagined in her dreams. "How are you, Anna? How's your health? How's your husband?" The receptionist fussed around her. "It's all right." "Thank you," Monica said mechanically. "I'm sorry for the delay. Maid's busy right now. You're not going to see another handyman, are you?" "Yes, of course. That's all right." At that moment, Monica realized clearly that she had been mistaken for a completely different person. And by all appearances, it was this girl whose name was written out in the name of a person so similar to herself. This and that. For starters, she was invited to a massage session. The woman who performed it, she chattered on and on, but that was half the trouble. Worse, she kept asking questions, forcing Monica to engage in dialogue. She had to answer as vaguely as possible so as not to draw suspicion to herself. "What kind of clothes are you wearing? Decided to change?" "It's the fashion these days," Monica replied as casually as possible. "It's kind of a folk style." "Is that it?" shared the masseuse. "And what can't they think of?" "No offense, Anna, but I wish your style would go out of style." "I really wish it were sooner. I'm not thrilled myself, but I have to live up to it." "I understand, yes." The situation was even worse with the mannequin woman. Apparently, she knew her clientele more intimately than the rest of the salon staff. Her questions were more personal, and she was clearly expecting Monica to answer in full, not just with a nod or a shake of the head. And when she saw the hands on the guests, she might as well have fainted. "What have you done to yourself?" Anna decided to do the dishes herself. Did the maid quit? What was the answer? Monica decidedly did not know. Because really, if anything could give away her deception, it was her hands. All the other oddities could be explained away, but this, feverishly thinking of a way to respond to that. She mechanically turned her face away from her manicure and avoided eye contact with it. Her gaze fell on the front door, and near it for the first second Monica thought she was in another one of her rare but so strange dreams, because she was looking at her exact copy, except dressed much better. Next, she realized it was just the same girl with whom the salon staff had mistaken her. Noticed her, and the administrator, and manicurist, and even the masseur, who, as bad luck would have it, at this very moment decided to run out for a smoke. Hanged awkward and even somewhat ominous silence. At that moment, everyone realized exactly what had happened. But no one had yet figured out what to do about it. Strangely enough, it was Anna who came to her senses first. She handed the administrator her coat and gracefully walked right up to Monica. "Yes," she expected yelling, scandal, and even physical abuse. In short, anything but what really happened. The day had not ceased to amaze me. Maid said, turning to Monica, "Ears, get your hands in order, girl. She obviously needs it. I'll pay for it. And you, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. I have a small favor to ask of you. There's a charming, cozy cafe nearby. When we're done with our treatments, have breakfast with me, please." "Of course." Monica not believing her ears, and the tale continued as if nothing had happened. And Monica was allowed to get along quite well with all the treatments, as much as she could have wished for. Even her hands and those miracle manicure that brought to quite a decent appearance. The only thing that did not leave the girl a feeling that for all this splendor, she still have something to pay. It can't all be that good. So when she and Monica went to the cafe, She felt as stiff and insecure as possible. Her companion seemed to sense this, and so she tried to dispel her fears as quickly as possible. After ordering to the friendly waiter, Anna looked at her copy sitting right in front of her and said, "Let's just keep it on a first-name basis." Okay, Monica agreed. "Don't worry about it. That's what you said about the season ticket. It's a small thing to me, but you obviously don't get to relax very often. My husband gave it to me. It's my birthday, and I left it somewhere." "It's my birthday today, too." Monica shared a new coincidence. "So I thought when I found him that it was useless to look for you, so at least I understand myself. And what I don't understand is why I suddenly have a twin sister that I don't know anything about. Why are you looking at me so surprised? There are no such coincidences." "That's right," Monica agreed. "But how could that happen? I've been growing up in an orphanage since I was a little girl. No one ever told me I had a sister, and I've been with my parents since I was a little girl. But they couldn't keep one daughter and put the other one in an orphanage, could they? I don't believe that for a second. I'd have to ask them. They both died recently. It was obvious that she hadn't fully recovered from the shock, and it was hard for her to talk about it. "I'm sorry," Monica said sincerely. "Thank you. Tell you what, I know a private investigator. A very good one. I'm gonna go talk to him. Maybe he does some digging. Let's stay in touch with you. My name is Anna." "Well, you already know that. By the way, I didn't even ask you." Monica, very pleasantly, smiled at Anna. She took one of the napkins on the table and wrote her phone number on it. Monica followed her example. They agreed that as soon as she found out anything, she would call her possible sister. That was the end of the story. Monica walked home absolutely thrilled. Of course, it was the best birthday party of her life. Not only had she managed to visit such an expensive salon, she also seemed to have found her own sister. This, of course, is not yet certain. But frankly, the girl had almost no doubts anymore. So that's why fate had so insistently led her to this day and to this place. However, life went on. Work, home, work, home. And again, work, work, work. All the same hopeless existence with rare problems of something good, mostly organized by the shenanigans of the cat. The euphoria of the meeting gradually waned. A day passed, then another. Then a week. Anna did not call. Monica tried to reassure herself that no detective, even the best in the world, could find the necessary information so quickly. But after all, it was possible to just talk. What if Anna decided she wasn't worth all the trouble? What if something happened to her? And if these endless ifs rolled around in her head incessantly, no matter how hard she tried to drive them away? She didn't dare to make the call herself. Maybe she was just shy or did not want to impose. Or maybe she didn't even fully believe in the reality of everything that had happened that day. She didn't want to call the number and find out that it didn't exist or belonged to someone else entirely. She was just so out of her mind with the hopelessness of her life that she was beginning to confuse dreams with reality. On the other hand, here's a napkin. It was thick, obviously not cheap, with the phone number neatly written on it in a handwriting that was certainly not Monica's own. And yet doubts overtook the girl. A few times, she even dialed the number on her old phone, but immediately reset the call. There was no telling how long she would continue to fret, but 2 weeks after the trip to the Salon, something happened that finally put an end to them. When Monica was once again returning from work, a handout outside a restaurant slipped a newspaper into her hands. The girl mechanically picked it up and brought it home. It would come in handy. Monica was not in the habit of reading it. Without looking, she put a stack of them on the nightstand in the hallway. They were saved in case she had to dry her shoes. She probably wouldn't have remembered it the next day if it hadn't been for the cat. In the morning, the beast went wild. Monica heard furious rustling in the hallway. She even got a little angry. It had just been a rare day off, and she was going to sleep in. Now she had to get up and undo the destruction wrought by the cat. As it turned out, it had stirred up that very stack of newspapers lying in the hallway. Picking up another sheet, Monica couldn't contain her surprised exclamations. On the U-turn was printed a picture of herself looking down from it. Or rather, probably not her, but her on-again, off-again sister. The large caption beneath the picture read, "Missing the heiress of a large fortune. The lost husband will be glad of any information about the whereabouts of his beloved." Monica looked at the date of the newspaper at the top of the page. It was the latest issue, the same one she had taken from the Scout the day before. The girl ran her eyes over the ads once more. Among other things, it listed the phone number of Anna's husband. She took her own cell phone and determinedly dialed the correct digits. "Hello," almost immediately answered a pleasant male voice. Hello, Ethan. "Yes, that's me. What can I do for you? I'm calling about your wife, Anna. I'm a friend of hers. I just heard what happened. I was wondering if there was anything I could do to help." Monica decided it wasn't a good idea to dump the whole fantasy story about the lost sisters on a man like that. So she introduced herself as a friend. Now was precious every minute, and there would still be time to explain. True, the girl was a little surprised by Ethan's voice. The thing was, he didn't sound particularly upset. But it was as if he'd switched to combustible mode. As soon as his missing wife's name was uttered, "Yeah, I could use all the help I can get to find her right now. You know, we're having volunteer search parties. Would you like to join them?" "I'd love to. Where do you want me to go?" He gave me the address, not far from the luxury salon. "Come as soon as you can." Monica didn't hesitate for a second and got ready and drove to her new husband's house. She expected life to boil around the mansion. Search parties, that sort of thing. But both the street and the house were quiet. She figured maybe everyone had already left and she'd be sent with some other group. The door appeared to have been opened by Ethan himself. That struck Monica as odd, too. Shouldn't there be servants in such a rich house? But she was even more surprised by her sister's husband's behavior. She was at a loss for words when he saw her standing on the threshold. But that was not the strange part. After all, she looked exactly like his missing wife. There was something to be surprised about. The strangeness came next. Ethan staggered and retreated a few steps without closing it. Nevertheless, the door to the house. His gaze grew frantic, as if he'd seen a ghost. And judging by what happened next, that's exactly what came into his mind. "That's impossible," he whispered. "Impossible? How did you get out? I left you tied up in that swamp myself. How could you have got out of there?" No. Retreating further and further back into the house. Ethan, whether he'd tripped, slipped, or just fallen, was on the floor. He mumbled something unintelligible, shrieked, and started banging his head. Apparently so great was the shock that his wife, whom he had personally buried in the swamps, had managed to get out of there. Monica quickly realized what had really happened. He had decided to get rid of her sister, probably for the inheritance. That's probably why you got married. And he came up with an almost perfect plan. Even if they found her, they couldn't prove it was murder. The only thing he didn't count on was that Anna had a twin, which apparently she hadn't told him about, not a second now. Monica called the police and briefly described the situation. Although the more she stayed in the house, the more she thought that perhaps she should have called an ambulance too. Apparently, Ethan was completely out of his mind from the turmoil he'd been through, and he was the only one who knew where it made sense to look for the babysitter. The police arrived promptly. The whole police force of the city was fully immersed in this very case, and therefore any new information on it was reacted with lightning speed. The husband was taken to the station. They took his contact information, promising to keep him in the loop. I mean, she introduced herself as the missing woman's sister. One look at her was enough for the cops to believe. They didn't even ask for documents. That evening, she received a call from the investigator assigned to the case. "Monica, hello. Your sister's husband, Cracked, told us exactly where he left her, lured her into the woods under the pretext of a picnic. Well, we have already sent a rescue squad there, but I'll tell you honestly, so much time has passed. The chances of finding her alive are not too much. Is there anything I can do to help?" Right away, Monica asked. "Can you leave us alone?" The researcher answered rather rudely. "We know our job. Stay at home, wait for news. Don't take any independent action. Do you understand me?" "I see." Sadly, she replied, and she just waited as she had been told and hoped for the best. It was very difficult to do that. No matter what Monica did, everything fell out of her hands and she couldn't focus on anything. Her thoughts kept returning to her missing sister. She was alone out there on the marshes, completely unfit for such an ordeal. Knowing that and doing nothing about it was unbearable. Of course, she'd never had time to find out if they were really sisters. But Monica was genuinely convinced that they were. She just couldn't give up the idea that she would finally have a family, even if it consisted of only one person. And maybe this detective On discovered something else. They should contact him now and ask for his help in the search. But she had no contacts. Nor did she have any idea which way to look for her sister, or else she probably wouldn't have had the patience to go there herself, despite the investigators' warnings. As it was, all she had to do was sit and wait for the call, which came several long days later. "Come to the station," the policeman said, businesslike, and passed out. And Monica drove on her way. What could that mean? Was it good or bad that they hadn't told her anything? Maybe they had found the body and didn't want to talk about it over the phone. Or maybe she's coming to the station now, and Anna is alive and well there. I wish she were. There's a limit to the trials that are sent to a man, and not at the station there wasn't. The frowning investigator placed on the table in front of me some dirty pieces of rope, either torn or tattered. They were packed in a thick plastic bag. "This is all that was found," the investigator said meaningfully. "There were traces of Anna's DNA on these ropes. Most likely she was tied up. They are delineated either by a dog or a wolf. I think you know what that means." "Are you saying she's dead?" Tears came to my eyes. Most likely she was torn apart by wild animals. "There is nothing more we can do, but you. You found her clothes, her body, some remains at least. What isn't there? But then how can you say she's dead?" Monica was indignant. Well, think about it. The gentle daughter of millionaires. Forgive me for being blunt. Alone in the woods for days. And then we find the rope she was tied up with the teeth marks of some predator. The conclusion, I think, is obvious. But shouldn't you find the body? Monica insisted. Technically, we should. And we're looking. But it's not as urgent as if there's a chance she's alive. We'll let you know Monica got up from her seat and literally flew out of the office, and not quite, maybe still alive and in need of help. They didn't want to look for her anymore, relying on some circumstantial evidence. Something had to be done. As if reading her thoughts, the investigator shouted after her, "Monica Petrovna, please don't do anything stupid." That's exactly what she was going to do. Certainly not to go into the swamp alone. I don't suppose that would do any good, would it? No, Monica had a better idea. On the way, she bought a large and detailed map of the city and its immediate surroundings from a kiosk. And when she returned home, she immersed herself in studying it. She knew that her husband had taken Anya somewhere in the swamp hardly too far from the city. The wilderness here began just beyond the outskirts of the city. Monica made a list of places that roughly matched that scant information. To her surprise, it wasn't that big. The plan was simple. Drive through the surrounding villages, asking around the locals. What if the system managed to get to people? The first few settlements were silent. No one saw anything, no one heard anything, no girls came out of the woods to them. With each new attempt, Monica lost more and more hope in the success of the venture. Besides, she was running out of money. After all these trips were not free. And the search was dragging on. It had been weeks since she had started it. After all, work was taking up the lion's share of her time. At this rate, this whole endeavor could go on for years and was unlikely to lead to success. Still, Monica wasn't going to stop. On her next day off, she visited another village, the 6th or 7th on the list. At first, it was the same as the previous ones. But when Monica was about to leave at the very outskirts, she saw a small boy close by in a joint stream. She approached him and was about to ask a question, but the boy beat her to it. "Oh, I see you've recovered, haven't you?" he exclaimed joyfully. Monica's heart started pounding too. "I think you have me confused with someone else." Carefully, she said, "There was a girl in the village who looked just like me, right?" "Apparently so," said the boy, surprised. "Is it your sister? I've been looking for her for a long time. Can you tell me where she might be?" "That's the way Grandpa Oliver has it. I help him around the house sometimes. So I saw her. One day, he said, in the woods he found her. He lives in a little house on the other side of the country, a little one all crooked. Don't get confused. Go straight ahead." Monica, thanking the boy, almost running, went down to the specified house. It was really impossible to miss it. It stood a little away from the rest of the buildings and was indeed a very depressing sight. It was more like a barn than a house. It did, in fact, slope slightly to one side, which was clearly not the intention of the original design. Not particularly concerned with propriety, Monica knocked from inside. Immediately, there was a ringing bark and then a fiddle meltdown. After a couple of minutes, the door swung open and a man appeared in front of her, clearly no longer young, but still quite sturdy. Beside him stood, tail wagging, a large black dog. Despite his fierce appearance, the girl immediately realized that at heart he was very kind. "My sister. Do you have her?" "Yes, that's right, I have. Come on in, granddaughter. Don't be shy. Take a look for yourself." Monica went inside, and indeed on the old sofa near the stove lay Anna. She was asleep now, but restlessly, occasionally shrieking and incessantly tossing and turning. Her sister put her hand on her forehead, and it was as if she were on fire. "She has a fever." "That's sad," said the elderly owner. "Maybe it's a cold. Maybe it's pneumonia. I try to stay inside as much as I can. But what can you do? What's in the village? And the ambulance doesn't come to us much." Monica was confused for a minute, then pulled out her phone. She thought about calling the investigator, explaining the situation, see if he could do something. But it turned out that fate itself had intervened again. Together with the cell phone, a small card printed on glossy cardboard slipped out of her pocket. The girl looked at it, a business card, Salon, and how it ended up in her pocket. She must have picked it up at the door. There was a stand with those just there, and then she had no time for that. And now this card was very, very helpful. Monica suspected that the employees of this institution would be more attentive to the problems of the client than the investigator who had already managed to bury her sister. Without thinking, she dialed the number. The Royal Spa. A pleasant woman's voice sounded in the receiver. "I'm listening." "Hello. I'm calling about your regular client, Anna. As you may know, she disappeared a while ago." "Yes." The intonation of the voice became careless. "And what do you want?" "You see, I found her, and she is alive, but seriously ill. We're in a remote village. Even the ambulance refuses to come here. I don't know how to help her." "Wait a minute." Following these words in the tube, there was some kind of incomprehensible hissing. Then a muffled whisper. Finally, Monica heard the voice again. This time a different one, moreover, a familiar one. "Hello, it's Marty, my friend." "Who am I talking to?" Maddie, the girl, rejoiced, remembering her manicure. That you must remember me. I'm Monica, my sister. Monica. How could she not remember? Even on the phone, Monica could hear the sneer in her voice. I take it you didn't find her in some godforsaken village. She needs medical attention. That's right. Listen and find out the exact address. Anna is insured at a good private clinic with a paid ambulance. Go to hell or high water, they'll come. Soon all the formalities were taken care of. All that was left was to wait for the paramedics to arrive. Grandpa Oliver made tea, served him dried tea and some cheap cookies. This uncomplicated treat seemed almost the tastiest she had ever eaten. How did you find her? That wasn't me. It was Polkin who found it. Grandpa answered, gently scratching the dog behind the ear. We went for a walk in the woods with him. So he suddenly snapped and ran. He must have smelled something. Then he came back, dragging me after him. I went, and I found her. She was still conscious at the time. She said her husband tied her up and left her. And Polkin got the rope hot. And Polkin got the rope hot and went to call me. That's the whole story. How do you manage all alone here? Yeah, I'm used to it. My wife died a long time ago, and I had a daughter who went to the city in search of a better life. She disappeared there. Polkin's no help, and the villagers are all hanging on to each other. Where am I? Who's under the sword? And where am I? With such unsuccessful conversations, they did not notice how the ambulance arrived. They took Anna to the hospital. They also agreed to take Monica to town. It was too late. The buses weren't running anymore. And she still had a cat to feed. And she just didn't want to leave him alone for a long time. She lay unconscious for several more days. In addition to hypothermia, she had problems with her circulation, from the fact that the ropes had been pressing on her limbs for a long time. But doctors assured Monica that the worst was avoided and that her arms and legs would be saved. The girl visited her sister every day, and one day she was told the good news. Anna finally came to her senses. She was still very weak, but she perfectly understood what was going on around her and could talk. Moreover, she insistently demanded to be allowed to contact her sister. Anna, Monica exclaimed as she entered her room, how are you feeling? So far, not so good. But it will pass. It's good to see you. And I'm glad. I was so worried about you. Thank you, sis. Listen, we should call the detective. He was going to meet me right before this unfortunate picnic. He said it was important. He must have found something. But I don't think it's that urgent. We'll wait another week until we finally like you. Yeah, you're probably right. That's what we did. We waited until Anna was released from the hospital. And then she contacted the detective and arranged for the girls to come together to meet him. On the appointed day, they sat at a table in the same cafe where they had their first breakfast together. The detective did not take long and appeared just a few minutes after them. I found out everything you wanted, he began. It wasn't easy, though. Our records are not very well kept even now, let alone 20 years ago. Still, I managed to find out that 19 years ago, 2 little girls, twins, were admitted to the city orphanage. There, I mean, as you understand, your mother. Excuse me? This is going to be unpleasant to hear. Let's just say she was a bad girl. Who her children came from, we don't know, but I think it was her fiancé. She ran away with him from her parents, and he left her when he found out she was pregnant. I was ashamed to go back to the village. She decided to try and get a job in the city herself. Did she work, or what did she live on? There is no information. And all sorts of rumors and speculation I will not tell you. It is known that in the city maternity hospital she appeared only when the term of delivery had already come. They were difficult and the woman died. But the children were saved. Both were placed in an orphanage. Only one of them was lucky. She was taken almost immediately, and in a wealthy family, and apparently raised as their own. They didn't even mention that, in fact, they were not. And the other one was never taken, but you know this without me. So to sum it up, yes, you are definitely sisters. I'd still recommend a DNA test, though, if it's important to you. Not because I'm not sure about anything, but if anything, it would be a better proof than anything I've dug up. Thank you very much. Anna thanked him and handed him the envelope with the fee. That's my job, the detective smiled. If you want, I can try to find your other relatives. Maybe your mother's parents, if they're still alive. Yes, please, Monica exclaimed. Anna paid for all of this. Maybe she didn't need these relatives. She had always lived in a family, and she must have loved her parents and considered them family. It is unlikely that she could understand the desire of the pupil to find her roots. But to her surprise, her sister nodded. We still have a lot to do, Anna said thoughtfully. As soon as the detective left the cafe, I hope for your help, sis. Of course, Monica smiled. The first thing they wanted to do was to thank Grandpa Oliver. The sisters hired workers, bought materials, and built him a new house, big and spacious, in place of his old barn shelf. They built him a nice box and brought him a nice box and brought him a nice box and brought him a whole bag of goodies. If it were not for him, the girl would have perished in the woods. No way. As usual, the grandfather denied it. Why spend so much money on an old man? I don't think I'm gonna die anytime soon. You didn't let me die. Well, I won't let you die either. Thank you, Grandpa grinned, but he agreed to the house after all. Then it was time for Monica to be embarrassed and refuse her sister's expensive gifts. It did not take long for Monica to buy her and her cat a new apartment not far from her mansion. A huge, luxurious renovation. Poor girl, she could not even dream of such an apartment, and honestly did not really understand what to do with such luxury. That's okay, you'll get used to it, she grinned, and quit your job. What am I going to live on? Mind you, I won't take another penny from you. I'm used to earning my own money. So you're going to earn your own money as my business partner. As it turned out, my parents ran a small chain of restaurants, and Monica, because of her work experience, already knew something about it. After all, she had also worked as a waitress, and sometimes as a receptionist. Anything could happen. Her sister, on the other hand, did not know much about how it should work. But she was very good at bookkeeping and other similar work, so together they made a perfect tandem which could continue the business with dignity, not their parents. Within a few months, they were able to take the network to a whole new level. Profits were increasing. Customers were leaving the restaurants extremely satisfied. The employees had nothing to complain about either. Monica's personnel policy tried to accommodate their needs and wishes, not to the detriment of the overall business, of course. The sisters realized it was time for them to expand and bought several more restaurants around the city, including the one where Monica worked as a dishwasher. Though the girl was not inclined to gloat, she took some pleasure in contemplating the face of her former boss as her employee presented herself in her new capacity. Of course, she and several of the waitresses were fired pretty quickly. And it wasn't a matter of personal vendetta. It was just that they had done their job extremely poorly. Oh, and to top it all off, they were cheating on the books. As it turned out, the last time the institution worked almost at a loss, and his master in the meantime was given papers on which all was well. Anya's husband went on trial. His lawyer tried to press the point that his client was in an insane state and could not fully answer to the law. Nevertheless, the judge rightly remarked that he had lost his head after the crime had been committed, which means that this cannot be taken into account as mitigating circumstances. As a result, the hapless criminal received a long sentence for attempted murder and attempting to cover up the traces of the crime. However, he was still to spend part of that time in a psychiatric hospital, and from there he would go to prison. Immediately after the trial, she filed for divorce. The sisters did not forget to visit grandfather Oliver regularly. They did what they could to help him around the house. They brought food and other necessary things from the city and simply kept the old man company, who had nobody to talk to except the dog. He called the girls granddaughters. And indeed, he was like a long-lost grandfather to them. And after a while, the private detective reappeared and surprised the sisters with more news. "It wasn't easy," as usual he began. "But I found your own grandfather. Only it seems to me that you know him so well." "Really?" Monica exclaimed. "Grandfather Oliver," Anna continued for her. "That's the one," grinned the detective. "Surprisingly, it's a fact. You probably know that his daughter went to town and then disappeared. So was your mother. Of course, the sisters broke the news to Grandpa Oliver himself. He didn't know how to respond. On the one hand, he had said goodbye to Respond. On the one hand, he had said goodbye to his daughter long ago, and on the other hand, deep in his heart, he hoped that she was alive after all. But now he had two beautiful granddaughters at once, and so began a new, happy life for Monica's sisters, and they became not only lost relatives for each other, but also best friends. They became not only lost relatives for each other, but helped each other travel to their grandfather's house, did business together, and vacationed together. In short, they did everything together. And a few years later, they both found eligible suitors, and the two weddings were also played on the same day together.